When the Prophet and his followers had left Mecca, it was clear to all that a day would come when they would have to defend their beliefs in battle. Now that day was fast approaching.
Permission is given to fight because they are wronged. Verily, Allah is most powerful for their aid. They are those who have been expelled from their homes.
God had given Muslims the order to struggle. Now God's revelations allowed that struggle to include the right to survive.
And so you also see the way in which jihad then comes to be defined as the right and indeed at times the obligation of Muslims both as individuals and of the Muslim community itself to defend itself, to engage in defensive warfare.
Armed with the Quran's approval of defending their community, Muhammad chose a traditional Arab solution: defend yourself by attacking. Muhammad would lead an army to raid the most important Quraysh caravan of the year. Muhammad's plan was to intercept the caravan as it approached the wells of Badr near the Red Sea. But before his forces got to the wells, word of the Muslim army reached Mecca. Quraysh leaders were outraged that Muhammad would attempt to capture their caravan. 1,000 men marched out of Mecca to meet the Muslim army. Muhammad now knew the Quraysh would force him to fight. The night before the battle, the Prophet had no idea if his men were willing to die in what had now become war. But after listening to stirring speeches, his followers vowed to offer their lives for Islam. The Quraysh army outnumbered the Muslims by 3 to 1. But as the battle began, Muhammad revealed he had a great sense of tactics, and his warriors fought with ferocity. The Quraysh leaders had believed a show of force would be enough to defeat the Muslims. But by midday, it was the Meccan army that panicked and fled the field. The dedication and cohesiveness of the Muslim army had saved Islam. Now Islam would reveal itself to be not only worthy of victory, but capable of compassion as well.
After the first victory that the Muslims achieved at the Battle of Badr, the Muslims began in the usual Arab way to kill all the survivors. And Muhammad immediately had a revelation to say, no, this must stop. There must be no killing of survivors.
Muhammad had set his eye on a more distant goal. The Muslim warrior's enemy of today must tomorrow become his brother in faith.
Say to those who are captives in your hands, if Allah findeth any good in your hearts, He will give you something better than what has been taken from you, and He will forgive you.
The victory at Badr had great consequences. After the battle, converts from all over Arabia began to flock to Medina. Like the Muslims, these converts saw the victory as a sign of God's salvation and protection, similar to God's parting of the Red Sea for the Israelites.
The Battle of Badr has enormous significance to the Muslim community, and I think that was the first political act that was successful, which cemented the vision or the dream that Islam could establish a community. Islam could become a civilization.
For 3 more years, the Quraysh army would try and destroy the Muslim community. They would win some battles, but always Muhammad and his followers struggled and survived as their numbers continued to grow. As the Meccan army struggled home after a final unsuccessful battle, their leader was at last forced to admit, every man of sense now knows Muhammad has not lied. Medina and the Muslim community were finally safe from attack. The Prophet was now poised for the final step in the pursuit of his destiny. That step would be his return to the holy city of Mecca. In January of the year 630, Muhammad set out for Mecca at the head of an army of 10,000. As the Muslims approached the holy city, Meccan people made no attempt to resist. It was clear that the old gods of the Quraysh were powerless in the face of Islam. The Prophet had no desire for blood. He issued an amnesty as a symbol of his wish to unite all people as the children of one God. The only victims he sought remained sitting in the Kaaba. The prophet entered the holy structure and proceeded to lead the destruction of all 365 idols as he recited the verse, "The truth has arrived and vanquished falsehood." Muhammad had validated his vision and proclaimed to the world the force and vitality of Islam. By the time of his death, June 632, the prophet had brought peace to Arabia. He had transformed a religion of many gods into a powerful monotheism based on a moral and ethical guide for daily living. But Muhammad's death was actually the birth of the great age of Islam. Within 100 years, the words of the prophet spread from Arabia to the world. As Arab culture mixed with Greek and Byzantine learning, an era of Islamic enlightenment brought enormous advances in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, literature, and architecture.
Who would have thought today, let alone then, that a man who is described as born an orphan into a divided Arabian society, illiterate, a caravan manager, would create a religious tradition that within 100 years of his death, its physical presence would spill out of Arabia, go all the way to North Africa, and all the way over to India.